A new film called Me Before You has touched a nerve among leaders in the disability community. The movie's about choosing not to live with a disability, and that's very close to the notion of assisted suicide. Our guest has been challenging the film and proposals for legalizing assisted suicide at the State House. We'd like to welcome the director of Second Thoughts, Massachusetts, John Kelly. Thank you very much for being with us, John.
Thanks, Chris.
First of all, and I know that we're talking about one film, but really we're talking about sort of a bit of a trend in Hollywood, a sort of way of almost glamorizing the choice to not live with a disability.
Yes, almost every time I see myself on screen, the character playing someone with my disability is clamoring for death. We saw that with Me Before You, Whose Life Is It Anyway, The Sea Inside, and also with $1 Million Baby. We seem to exist on screen to confirm people's beliefs that our lives are not worth living, and we oppose that totally.
Well, of course, what about your own experience? I mean, you had a crossroads in your life. Your choices were limited, but in a way, you had to make a choice.
Well, what I noticed pretty soon after my own injury was that it wasn't so much the actual loss of physical function, although I was depressed 2 years post my injury, like the character Will, but that the lack of access, lack of opportunities, and catastrophic loss of status were what really affected me. And I noticed pretty soon on that people would even say to me or think that they would be rather dead than like me. I was talking to a Rhode Island reporter a few months ago about the assisted suicide bill down there on the telephone, and she said, well, I know I would want it if I was ever paralyzed from the neck down.
This is BNN News. We're talking with John Kelly of Second Thoughts, Massachusetts. Talk about this particular film here, because I did not see it. I'm not even sure I want to see it, but on the other hand, this is a case where, this is somebody who makes a certain choice, and I guess, couldn't people make a choice like that and just do a film about it?
Well, the choice is the author's choice, Jojo Moyes, who wrote the book and wrote the screenplay for the movie. And she said that when she wrote the book, quality of life was very high in my mind. I had 2 relatives who required 24-hour care just to stay alive. I think if you deal with that situation on any kind of lengthy basis, you can't help but ask yourself questions about how someone's lives and what kind of quality of life you can offer someone. At what point does the quality become meaningless? At what point do you give someone the right to decide for themselves? So she's a bigot, and she wanted to write a book, and unfortunately for us, millions of people bought the book and are now seeing the movie. We never see the opposite side of the picture, and she admitted that she didn't speak to any quadriplegics before writing the movie. It's a cartoon caricature in which a wealthy man who has everything going for him, including a woman who's beautiful, with whom he's mutually in love, and yet he still decides to kill himself.
Of course, the other issue here is how this movie affects people who are living with disabilities, whether they have the disabilities themselves or if they're a family member or a partner. And you've made a public service message addressing that.
Right. Yes, what that did was it talked about how when Hollywood talks about disability, they do not say life gets better, live on. They say, of course you want to die, here are the means to do so. And we're very worried about disabled people who might be experiencing depression, that this kind of message sends to them and to people around them that they actually are better off dead than disabled. And I shudder to think of what this film says to newly injured people who, yes, we do get depressed after these injuries, but just as someone who loses a child or a partner can grieve and move on, we also can grieve, move on, and humans are amazingly flexible. All we need is love, support, and opportunities, and we, like everyone in society, can thrive.
And we're going to take a look at part of the response to the Hollywood message.
We hear suicide prevention messages all the time.
Celebrities telling us we're not alone.
Hollywood stars saying we have so much to live for.
But when you have a disability,
But if you're disabled,
For folks in the disability community,
we get a different message.
I want to know why you don't want any more treatment.
Because I don't want to go on living like this.
We're told another story.
I can't be like this, Frankie.
Hollywood tells us our lives aren't worth living after all.
I want to be in Paris as me. The old me.
And they tell us again.
Harvey killed himself. Harvey was a cripple. He didn't belong.
And again.
If you're dealing with depression,
don't listen to these dangerous ideas.
Just get help.
don't get help killing yourself.
Just get help.
Call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255.
flip the script.
Change the story.
you deserve to live boldly.
And you deserve to live on.
Because your life is worth living.
Because my life is worth living.
Because disabled lives are worth living.
Live on. Disability Pride, Disability Awareness. Center for Disability Rights, Inc. CDRNYS.org.
John, talk about that, your experience moving on, because just from talking to you, I get the sense that quality of life is something you are very concerned about.
Well, I'm trying to improve the opportunities for disabled people. It's as if the able-bodied majority almost doesn't want us to have a good time, whether it's being able to get into buildings, get a job, just access the world that we live in. And these films keep coming out with the same message, and there's a bottom line neoliberal attack going on disabled people across the board, and this is one part of it.
Because one of the things you're concerned about is legislation at the State House. It doesn't look as if there's going to be any change this year, but talk about what you've been doing around that.
Well, we've been fighting the assisted suicide proposals now for 10 years. And there was a ballot in 2012 that we fought against. And basically we were saying everyone deserves suicide prevention services, everyone should be valued equally, and under assisted suicide, innocent people die, whether through mistakes. I mean, come on, who believes that doctors are always right? And also abuse. People are coerced either subtly or forcefully. And the government should not be in the business of sponsoring a death program.
Of course, the other thing too is, I guess, in some cases, people make decisions, and maybe their state of mind is not what it should be. Maybe.
Well, like the bill at the State House had a provision that people were to see a psychologist or psychiatrist one time, in which the counselor would determine that the person was not suffering from depression or a psychological disorder causing impaired judgment. So what this bill does is says, if you have a disability, and if you are very ill, if you have disabling features like needing help with personal care, or if you feel like a burden, then it's rational for you to commit suicide. This is a threat to the basis of our society, in which everyone has to be equal before the law and have access to equal services.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Chris.
John Kelly of Second Thoughts, Massachusetts.